Okay.
Certainly live.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to call the May 28, 2025 meeting of the County of Oswego Industrial Development Agency to order. Tim, can you do a roll call of the members?
Sure thing. Nick Nally.
Present.
Pat Carroll. Present. Mary Ellen Chesbro.
Present.
Trish Peter Clark.
Present.
Gary Standard. Tim Stahl, I am here, and Mark Greco is excused. We have four.
Okay. And Austin, can you go over
Sure.
staff? Yes.
Yes, Austin Wheelock, CEO of the County of Oswego IDA, is in attendance. Kevin Lamontagne, CFO of the County of Oswego IDA, is in attendance, as well as Nathan Emmons, staff of Operations Oswego County, Kevin Caracoli, General Counsel for the IDA, and Matt Moses, who is here representing Constellation. We may have some other guests who join us later in the meeting virtually, and we will announce them when they do join us.
Okay. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the minutes. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Section by Tricia, seconded by Tim. Any discussion, questions, comments on the minutes from last meeting? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Notice the meeting was in the Pale Times on May 17th. And number 3 is the financial report for April 30th. Kevin Lamontagne, I'm assuming you're going to take that.
Yes, thanks, Nick. I sure will. Just you have the financial report in front of you for, as you said, through April 30th. A couple of comments as we go through the pages, starting with the balance sheet. There's one new item that's appeared, which is under fixed assets 103.0, project equipment held to lease. This is the kind of accounting, I would call it the accounting result of the lease agreement we agreed to make out of the pilot EDF fund to City BOCES for them to buy classroom high-end robotics equipment, software, etc., training materials for their PTech program for their lab there. So we've been ready to close that for a long time. That's been closed, and this will show up as a residual. We'll amortize this cost down over the life of the lease, at which point the city will own the equipment and everything they purchased under the lease. So
What's the length of time of that again? 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
All right.
So that's just a new item there, and that'll take care of itself as the months go on. Nothing to be particularly concerned with, previously approved. That's all I had. On the balance sheet, I guess at the last page, page 404, we see that there's some pilots, item 631.2, pilots payable to taxing authorities. As of April 30th, and even now, we're still in the pilot collections season and remittance season to the taxing authorities. So as of April 30th, we had just gotten in two significant payments, one from Hutamaki, which is the biggest, and also from Springside at Seneca Hill, two that we were working with the companies to collect. So those came in right before the end of the month, with remittances to the taxing authorities still due as of April 30th. So that's why that number is at 280,000.
Okay.
And then the income statement, just a couple of comments on the cost side. We're coming in here now 8 months into the year, 2/3. We get, by this point in the year, we have a little more normalization in cost. We see a couple of things, dues and conferences on the expenses side, 4.2, running a little higher than last year. That was primarily related to sponsoring the NYS EDC Economic Blueprint and Competitiveness Report, which Austin has provided updates on before. And then on property maintenance, we're still running a credit balance for the year, and that we've talked about this before, but it relates to a $975 credit that was on our books for multiple years back, and some cleanup and reconciliation that Karen and I worked on. We were able to resolve that, and it ended up in a $975 credit. It just looks unusual. It's relatively insignificant value. So that's all I have on the P&L. Any questions or comments?
Accounts payable at 0, Kevin?
Say that again, Tricia.
The accounts payable is at 0 through
Yeah,
April.
so right. So we do use accounts payable as and when, bills come in. It's just with the activity and the idea, it's relatively low. So we have the pilots due to taxing authorities. That's where we show that AP, but other AP was 0 at the end of April. Typically there's some value in there.
Yeah.
on OOC, we see a lot more invoices, so there's generally always something in AP.
Any other questions, comments on this? Anything else, Kevin?
No, thanks for taking a look with me.
Get a motion to approve the financials.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Tricia, second by Pat. Any comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Skip.
Want to skip 4 and go to 5? I guess this here.
Let's do that, yeah, actually.
Oh, so
Yeah, we can get into this. So, in front of you today, so the IDA has received an application for financial assistance from Constellation related to 9 Mile Point nuclear stations. And we are joined by Matt Moses from representing Constellation and 9 Mile to answer any questions we have related to this request. And so I'll also, as part of this, I'll turn it over a little bit to Kevin Caracoli because he's been involved in sort of some of these ongoing negotiations. But it's to a point now where it's past the bar to come to the IDA for the formal consideration for financial assistance and hopefully to be go to the next step, which would happen at I believe at next month's meeting. So turn over to you, Kevin, to share anything related to where we're at, and I could jump back in, and I think Kevin LaMontagne can as well, because we're all familiar with this project, but I just, I know that Kevin's been working with the taxing authorities directly.
Well, as I believe I reported at the last meeting, we at that point had a tentative agreement that was subject to review and approval by each of the taxing jurisdictions for a new 4-year comprehensive agreement with the owners of 9 Mile Point 1 and 2, Constellation Energy. Company is 9 Mile Point Nuclear Station. The taxing authorities involved in this case are the Oswego City School District, the Town of Scriba, and the County of Oswego. County Ledge approved the terms of the settlement at their meeting last week. The town board approved the terms at its meeting last week. And the school district is scheduled to approve their terms on Monday evening. They got a little caught up with the school board elections last week, and it was a little too much for them to do it all at once. We were hoping that by the time we presented to the IDA board, all 3 taxing jurisdictions would have approved. I do have assurances and was able to get authority to tell you and represent publicly that the Oswego City School District fully supports this, and in fact was really driving force behind having a pilot agreement through the IDA through the section 412A. So that's where we're at. It is a comprehensive 4-year agreement, the details of which total amount that the company has agreed to pay, again, for units 1 and 2 and across the board to each of the 3 taxing jurisdictions is $134 million. That represents roughly a nearly 10% increase over the payments that were made under the expiring pilot agreement that the IDA is also involved in. And ultimately, everyone came away from this agreement pleased, and I believe so. I won't speak for the company, but Matt's here to do that. But I would venture to say that we escaped this one without too many injuries. So.
And I can kind of talk a little bit. I mean, so really, this is a pilot related to the retention and the continuing improvement of those facilities out there. It's supporting of the 816 existing full-time employees, as well as the contract workers, and with a payroll that exceeds over $100 million a year here in Oswego County. And this will help to continue the operations through 2029. This is also going to address the New York State Clean Energy Standard. They produce about almost a half of all of New York State's clean energy, I think 48% of all throughout the state. You know, it's addressing the county's economic advancement plan through supporting the energy cluster. As Kevin said earlier, it's a roughly, it was $134 million over 4 years. You know, supports the additional contract workers who come in for refueling, you know, additional 1,000 to 2,000, as well as all of the indirect economic impact related to the tourism, the hotel, the restaurant industry. You know, so obviously these are all impacts and benefits from this. So, and as Kevin said, that the terms have been approved by 2 of the 3 taxing authorities, but the third one that hasn't yet was the one who really brought us all together to do this. So we don't anticipate any question related to this. So in the past, we have done amended restated pilot agreements with 9 Mile. For this, they've asked for a new pilot agreement. So we're you know, kind of going through the process again for, you know, initial resolution, inducible resolution, like a to that level. So at this point, it's an initial resolution. Our council at Barclay Damon, which is a different team, I will say, just be aware, it's a different team. That is the team that represents Constellation, has determined that the project is eligible for IDA benefits, and has, you know, and put together a resolution for us for today. So, Kevin, anything you wanted to bring up to share as well related to the project?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, the intent on the timeline is to, should this be approved today, we'll work with the company to schedule a public hearing in the town of Scriba in these coming weeks with a proper notice, 10 days notice, and then reach approval in June, which is when the same basic date was achieved last time in 2020, and that'll be in time for the effective date of July 1st. So I think we have a good path forward should this be approved today. In addition, I should just say we'll have a public hearing with public hearing notices, and this is a deviation, so we'll also send deviation letters. That's 2 separate notices the taxing authorities will receive from us. We use a bit special letters in this case, and perhaps even Matt, you might have created it last year. I have to go back into my files, but we'll be sending those as well to the taxing authorities in the intervening weeks here. That's all.
Yeah, so it is important to understand that the current pilot agreement is, you know, expiring. So to keep a property under pilot agreement, you know, we are trying to look to complete this process before July, before July 1st. But there's been a lot of homework and a lot of work done behind, you know, leading up to this to have everything, all of our ducks in a row, or else potentially could have come to the IDA earlier. But, you know, we want to make sure all the ducks were in a row, with specifically related to the taxing authorities to make sure they were all on board with this. So I guess I'll open it up to any questions from the board.
Last time we did this, it was brought. It had to be tied to a certain project. Is it tied to a refueling project? Is it tied to, I think last time there was a roof that needed to be replaced, stuff that would have done anyway. But do we have to, is that something we're worried about this time?
No. I mean, it's a great question. We through our special counsel, myself, and company identified a number of criteria, but the foremost of it is the job retention and the additional creation of jobs related to the, you know, refueling outages. Those in and of themselves tip the scale or allow for the project to be qualified under municipal law.
There are other investments and things that will be done in the near future by Constellation related to 9 Mile. I don't know that it's specifically related to, I won't say it's specifically related to this, but there's going to be a significant investment related to relicensing that, you know, will be taking place in the near future and other things. So wouldn't say it's specifically related to this, but there's.
I'm not questioning whether we should do it. I'm just.
Yeah.
No, I
We
think,
determined the project, you know.
yeah, I think from a legal perspective, we're fine. From a financial perspective, you know, these facilities are under constant improvement. And if the board would like, we can try to quantify that spend on an annual basis.
I just didn't know if we had to for the sake of the state.
Yeah.
That's all.
we've got
If we've got it covered with the
sufficiently
job
defined.
retention, then we're good. Okay.
No, I would just add that, Kevin and I have been in this for 25, or so. About that years since Constellation first bought this, or was, Fitzpatrick was first sold, and these are really significant negotiations between the owners and the community, and they're not easy. They take half a year to get through, it seems, and it's I think we wear each other down pretty good to come to a result that works for everyone, and it is a 10% increase, but when you translate that, that's a $3 million a year increase of new tax revenue to the community, 12 million over the 4-year term. So not a lot of other taxpayers bring that level of contribution, setting aside all the economic benefits of the employment and continue to spend out there. So it's a good, I think, agreement from the company's perspective and from the community's perspective to create stability at that site for hopefully what we're all looking forward to is a nuclear renaissance. And, with last Friday's executive order, promoting, 4X, that's 4 times new nuclear across the country. That would be exciting, I think, for all of us to have that come to our doorstep. So it's, these are good times, I think, to look forward to that investment on a national level for all the great reasons that we sit here today and enjoy.
One of the other things I would think it's important to point out, it's a difference between the last agreement and this agreement. Is that the last time, for a host of reasons, the agency agreed to take on the pilot agreement, but received a relatively minor payment compared to other projects that we provide assistance to. This time around, part of the negotiations really did contemplate a further payment to the agency in terms of an administrative fee. And so that is built into the agreement. And by agreement, the city school district agreed to shoulder the burden on behalf of all of the tax jurisdictions for their portion of that fee. The company's paying their portion as well. The agency will receive $150,000 as far as an administrative fee goes towards this project. By comparison, I think we received somewhere around 30,000 4 years ago. So again, from the agency's perspective, it's an improved
Significantly.
agreement.
And it aligns better with the work that's done by the agency as well, right? So.
Certainly.
So I don't really think there's too much else to say on it. I would just want to say, thanking, Constellation for continued investment into this community as well as, commitment to jobs for several years. And, hopefully we can continue, beyond this 4 years, look to see what we can do for the longer term and potentially helping to secure a 4th nuclear plant. So it'll come.
Whatever we can do to help make that happen. I think I speak for all of us when I say that. So, can I get a motion to approve the initial resolution for,
I'll move it.
Gary?
I'll second.
Seconded Mel. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And as we said, the next steps will be to schedule a public hearing in the local municipality and, when it's appropriate, come back and look at the additional resolutions that would be required to be passed to get this closed.
Our next scheduled meeting is June 25th, and I think we've talked about that even if we're not suggesting that we necessarily need a special meeting of the agency, we think we can probably get this all done with a vote on the 25th and then line up the closing so it occurs before the 1st.
Great. Well, thank you all, and I'll see you in a month.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Are we ready to bring our other guest in? I will state for the record that we do have two new guests that are joining the meeting at this time for our next items. The first guest that I want to acknowledge is Anthony Bell with Renewable Properties. The second guest is Daniel Spitzer, who is the general counsel from Hodgson Russ, representing the Renewable Properties project. So I believe we are next on the agenda is RPNY Solar 9 LLC.
So, Austin, I'll give a quick overview, and then what I'd like to do is turn it over to Anthony and perhaps Mr. Spitzer to give any updates on the project timeline, et cetera, just kind of where it sits now. This project. So let me give a quick overview, and we'll turn over to our guests. So it's in the town of Oswego. Are located at 387 Furnace Station Road. It's a 3.25 megawatt AC solar energy production facility. The project is, and Kevin Caracoli, wearing his hat as counsel to the town of Oswego, could give us an update, but my understanding is it's fully approved for by the town.
Right.
Are there any outstanding matters in that? I don't think so.
There is one significant but issue related to host community benefits and an agreement, but there's no stumbling block there. It's just a matter of timing. The company's acknowledged the need for a host community benefit, and we're in the midst of negotiating that now. So not seeing that as a roadblock in any way to the presentation today or consideration of an initial resolution.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. So we have, completed application that's been reviewed by, in-house and also by council, including our special counsel, Barclay Damon. It's a $6.6 million project. The project site is approximately 13.7 acres. It's a 23.84 acre parcel, and again, generating 3.25 megawatts. This project has applied under our current and most updated solar UTIP or UTIP solar deviation policy. The $7,000 per megawatt would apply. The $10,000 application fee with $9,500 creditable at closing against our other fees. Those two parameters apply, as well as requirements for the decommissioning plan and bond, et cetera, and a host community benefit discussion being had with the town. So it complies with our current policy. And my understanding is the project is on a good track to begin and complete construction, connect to the grid in a reasonable amount of time here, but I'll let Anthony talk a little bit more about the timeline. Are there any questions for me before we proceed? One more thing I'll say is this is what we call the initial resolution in front of us today, which defines this project as a project with a capital P by the prevailing laws, and then authorizes the scheduling of the public hearing. So I'll work with Anthony to get that scheduled between now and the June meeting, and I expect we'd have the approving resolutions in front of you for the June meeting. This would also require a deviation letter to be issued by the agency to the taxing authorities, in addition to the public hearing notice. So, Anthony, maybe you could give just an overview of where the project and where things are.
Yes, no problem. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Thank you for all for meeting with us and facilitating a Zoom meeting. Thank you for that intro, Kevin. Just a few updates from what Kevin has already mentioned regarding the project. We did receive all of our local approvals from the town of Oswego last September, and since then have been working towards construction and actually before construction, submittal of building permits to the town of Oswego. We're currently in the process of selecting our engineering, procurement, and construction prime contractor, and we've narrowed that field of candidates down and are poised to make a selection here very soon, with a target of submitting for building permits around October, ideally, and then hopefully breaking ground around November. The one other sort of update or change from what Kevin mentioned is that the project megawatt size in terms of megawatts AC alternating current, which is what is tracked by the utility, but I also know is what's tracked for the purposes of pilot agreements is AC, not DC. The project size is now is going to be 3 megawatts AC rather than the 3.25. That's just
Oh.
because of some as we've been fine tuning the site plan, working in doing that additional engineering that's necessary for building permits. We've realized some design constraints, but then also just some procurement and specific, the specific make and model of panels that are being procured for this project. Panels are different sizes, length by width, and it's resulted in slightly smaller project in terms of megawatts AC. But other than that, everything Kevin already mentioned is accurate and on track.
Anthony, with that update, is the acreage still approximately the same at 13.7, more or less inside the fence?
Yes, yeah. So that's still within the same developmental footprint, just fewer
Right.
panels in that
Yep.
in that same area. Yes.
Where on Furnace Road is this? Is it,
Furnace Station Road, it's,
near Rathburn somewhere?
It's
yeah,
between County Route 7 and Rathburn on Furnace Station. So on the south side of Furnace Station. I had to check.
I walked out of the room for a moment, but did you state that this project has received all local approvals that has gone through?
Yeah, we went through that and Kevin gave some overview of that as well. They're moving toward building permit, basically.
Yeah, I mean, just from the local perspective, this did not receive a whole lot of negative feedback. There aren't many neighbors around. This is pretty ideal location for a project of this nature. It abuts farm land at a higher elevation. There's a handful of neighbors that raise some concerns about visual screenings and things of that nature that the company very responsive to implementing in the final design. And so it received unanimous support from the planning board. And as I had mentioned earlier, the town board is in the process of negotiating a host community benefit with the company, which will certainly be in place long before groundbreaking.
Is the land mostly wooded or farmland where you're gonna put the panels?
Mostly former agricultural production.
And
There's some minimal clearing by the looks of the site plan from my look.
somewhat unique, this particular company actually purchased the land. They're not leasing it.
Hmm.
So
Right.
that, I think that bears telling and, I think to me that if they're investing in the land as opposed to just leasing it, I don't know, that kind of increases the level of interest for me.
Yeah.
And if I may to add to that sentiment, yes, we did purchase the property, and renewable properties, RPNY. We develop, construct, and then operate. So it's our intention to operate the facility for the 35-year life of the facility. I know some developers develop and then sell after construction to other entities, other companies that would operate. That's not our model. So we're not the only ones who do that, but it does speak to what Kevin was saying about, we're invested in this project for the whole life.
Is there going to be a courtesy split related to this, or is it specifically just the parcel are they developing the entire parcel?
It's a larger footprint, right, Anthony?
Yeah, it's most of the parcel. The parts of the parcel that don't fall within the project footprint. So the the area inside the fence is mostly along the west side of the property where there's a pretty steep grade that's undevelopable. I think, Kevin, that was a conversation we had about, if there's any benefit to having a courtesy split, just because of, how small that outside sliver would be. So, I think we're sort of we're open to that. I think, obviously if it makes sense that, the area outside the fence is significant enough to realize, the tax savings there, we would want to pursue that. But I know that was a question that was raised somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I think we could, that's probably more of a local decision. I mean, our policy indicates that we're only providing tax exemption for the footprint, within a fence line. I can certainly consult with the assessor if the land outside the fence line is so negligible and undevelopable, they may just choose to exempt it all or not. I think that's more of a local decision, but the assessor is aware of what our policy is in that regard.
Okay.
And like I said, I apologize, I missed it. Is there a decommissioning plan already in place? For the
There is
project?
a decommissioning plan that is proposed, and forgive me, Anthony, I think it's either in place or I don't know that it's necessarily been signed, but I think all of the details are in place.
Posting of there was a plan that was submitted with a cost estimate that was reviewed and approved by the town as part of the local approval process. Posting of the decommissioning bond is a gating item to receiving building permits, just like the host community benefit agreement.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
As long as, all of those items are addressed before approval. Or final, I guess, any final approvals.
Generally before closing, we look to have all that resolved. I mean, always before by closing at least.
What we're looking for today is an initial resolution.
Yep.
Yes,
So
Nick, that's right. Yeah.
determine the project is eligible for benefits and to schedule a public hearing in the town of Oswego.
Taking a motion for that. Mel? Second. Gary? No? Tim?
Sure.
Second by Tim. Open it for discussion.
I guess one other point, just clarifying, or for everyone else, I think I know the answer to this, but this is strictly solar arrays. There's no battery energy storage system contemplated on this site, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Our local approvals are just for solar. There's no battery.
Thank you.
Is the screening on the inside or the outside of the fence?
The planting, the visual screening, that is all outside the fence. We're making use of the existing vegetation, trees and understory that's already within the project setbacks, and then the areas where that doesn't exist, predominantly on the north. So where there was some visibility from the road, we have a landscaping plan and a planting plan approved as part of the permit, and that's all outside of the fence and closer to the road.
And this is within our standard policy that we have at this point.
This
Absolutely.
is everything that's being considered is based on our latest solar deviation policy that was approved last year.
Anybody else, any questions or? Okay.
Let me ask maybe just so for again clarification, Anthony, you mentioned permitting in October, groundbreaking November. What in your experience and estimation could delay that realistically?
Right now, the only thing that may delay that is, making sure all those gating items for building permit submittals aren't, for whatever reason, don't go as smoothly as we hope. I don't think we'll have any problem posting the decommissioning bond. As you mentioned, we're already speaking with the town about the host community benefit agreement. I think, and if anything were to delay that, it would just be, sort of engineering design delays when it comes to finalizing the issue for permit sets for the building permits. But so far, I just checked in with our construction manager for this project, and everything so far is on track.
The fact that this is owner occupied essentially also I think helps because they're not packaging this up and selling it to somebody else, so that could create a delay. I mean, I think the incentive is for this particular company to get shovels in the ground as soon as possible.
Makes sense. Okay, got a motion on the table, can we get, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, thank you.
So Anthony,
you.
at this time, you're free to go if you'd like. It is a public meeting, so you're also welcome to stay. Attorney Spitzer on the phone is representing another project we have on our agenda, so we're going to cover number 7 and 8 now.
Sure. I just want to ask for the public comment, who should I coordinate with for setting? I know that's going to be with the town of Oswego.
Yeah,
I
well,
know
I'll
we
work with
want
you
to
on
be
that,
present
Anthony.
with you. Okay.
I'll reach out to them and we could talk about some dates offline, and
Okay.
we know their hours, so we can, and then there's a little bit of back and forth, contact them for availability, and then, but they're good about it at the town.
Sure. Yeah. No, I was just curious who to coordinate with, but we'll
Yeah,
coordinate
I'll take care of
offline.
that with you.
Kevin.
And then we'll do the notice, and
Yeah.
sort of like we did here, give the overview of the benefits, the project and the benefits, and then leave it open for input from you or to take questions from the community at large.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. So Dan, we have Jim or James
James, yeah.
in the waiting room. Yeah, James. So
I'll let James in. My thanks to the board for that. And both of these companies really have their act together. So they're two of the better solar companies. I'd have to spend a lot more time talking about some of my other clients, but these two are two that really have their act together.
that's good. It's been good working with Anthony, and look forward to working with James.
Yeah.
So we have, I'll go ahead and introduce, we're covering items number 6 and 7 now. Sorry, number 7 and 8 now. And we have James Geschweiler on the phone from, Trail Ridge Power, and attorney Daniel Spitzer, who's representing same. And the proposal in front of us for both projects, it's 2 separate resolutions. The consent to ownership transfer, as we generally describe it on the agenda. We've seen these before where this project is developed. It was actually the ownership, it was originally developed by one developer, it was kind of initially developed and conceptualized, designed by one developer, then sold for the construction phase to another developer, and took it to the next phase. And now we're sitting here today with Trail Ridge Power, who I'll turn it over to James, but intends to purchase both projects and then run them as community solar farms. So that's what's in front of us. We've seen many of these in the past, probably dozens, I guess, across all of our projects. And as we just looked at with another solar project, there's different models, whereas this is a lease by this company. It's fully approved. It's on track for closing. But now we're looking at an ownership change before closing. And as I say, we've seen this before where it's closed almost right before the ownership. Sorry, it's closed in conjunction with the ownership change, which I think is what we're up against here. So James, maybe you could just give a little overview of Trail Ridge Power and your intentions for these 2 projects and your plans for the future.
Yep. Oh, and thanks, Kevin, and nice to meet you all, IDA team. As Kevin said, my name is James Geschweiler. I'm Chief Financial Officer here at Trail Ridge Power, also a co-founder. I also was previously CFO and a co-founder of another commercial scale renewable company called Catalyze, where we did many projects in New York. So New York is very familiar territory. Have personally been involved in developing over 50 megawatts of projects in New York. Trail Ridge Power is relatively new company. We're just a little over a year old. And we formed it because we view that the whole grid is changing and you guys are living it, right? We're moving to a much more distributed architecture. We were backed by a large private equity firm in New York City, HIG Capital. We already have 10 megawatts operating. We'll have about 40 by the end of the year. And as Kevin noted, projects do change hands, but we're here to be the long-term owner operator. Part of Trail Ridge's philosophy and view, which is very different than the way the industry has operated for many years, is that energizing these projects is the beginning of the journey. It's not the end. So we're not a dev flip, see you later, we hope it all works out group. We view that these are generation assets that are going to live, breathe, evolve, add things like storage, obviously things to talk about in the future. There are no current additional plans for this project, but the general view is one of very long-term strategy, and our financial backing is entirely on top of that. Yes, we are buying this from Radial Power. Radial are good friends who we've known for a very long time. We have other projects that we are acquiring from them and have other joint working relationships. And yes, as Kevin noted, in conclusion, we are not only acquiring this to now just finish out the construction, place it in service, but we are both the sponsor equity and the arranger of the financiers for tax credit. So this is actually a couple part transaction where we will be arranging for tax equity with a group called Verdant. That will be a sale leaseback of the energy property. We've already reviewed all the documents. The IDA's agreement and the pilot agreement anticipated this. It's all in alignment. We've vetted this all with the attorneys, and I think we're all pretty much on the same page. So please, questions.
So what's this other sales lease break? It seems like similar to what we're doing.
Well, oh, go ahead.
I was going to state that, so these are projects that have previously been approved by the IDA. They were actually originally approved back in 2023. And then there's been a sort of a series of ownership changes. It was sold originally, I believe, from RIC Energy to Radial Power, from Radial Power now to Trail Ridge. And so what they are asking for is a consent to an ownership transfer for a pilot agreement that and an agreement that have already been approved. So that's what we're going to do today.
So all we're doing is approving the transfer at this point.
That's correct. So Radial Power was already given approval to do this. They've elected to sell the project to Trail Ridge Power.
And where exactly is this located again?
Maple Ave in Volney. So it's if you're coming up 481, and on the left side is the Miller facility. Directly on the east side of that is where these homes are. So they're visible from 481.
The ones that are already built.
Correct.
Okay.
Wait, you're saying they're selling the project, but it's already been built?
Well, I guess that's a question for the developer. Is that I don't know if they're 100% built, but I know
No, they're not 100% built.
They're not
So
finished.
yeah, the projects are right at mechanical completion. So the racking's up, the panels are on, most of the electrical work has been finished, but they've not yet been connected to the grid. This is a common transfer point for financial purposes. And then, as I was saying a moment ago, we will work hand in hand with Radial to finish out that construction, and then also do the permanent financing, which will involve the monetizing the tax credits with a bank in a few months.
One thing I will state for this project is that due to them beginning the construction before the pilot had been closed, they have not been able to collect any sales tax exemption related to anything on this project. So I believe Kevin LaMontagne, you know what that figure is. It's somewhere in the, I think both projects together is somewhere over $700,000 of potential sales tax exemptions that have been foregone because they didn't close it before that happened. So I would say from that perspective that the benefit that they will be getting is going to be reduced by that amount. So once it's one of the
Why didn't we close already?
It was a decision made by the previous company. I couldn't say.
So it was on their end.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
It did. I'll say it did seem, we kind of, best to my knowledge and belief, something changed at Radial. They were on a fast track to close it at the end of last year.
I think they had lined up a particular investor and tax equity investor
Yes,
that a
right.
transaction that then did not go forward. So The IDA has been extremely patient for sending me emails about once a month saying, hey, what's happening with this deal? And me pinging my client, asking radio what's going on. But I think basically what happened is that the deal they had lined up originally fell through, the deal that they, when they purchased it from Rick. And so they were able to find, fortunately, Trail Ridge to replace them.
Is it typical for a project to build out before getting the approval from our office?
They've gotten the approval. No, I will say they've received all
signing it, sorry.
approvals. They just didn't close on the benefits, correct? So the project had already received approval. It actually received approval twice because it was originally approved through RIC Energy, and then it was consent. The ownership transfer was consented to Radial Power last year. I mean, one thing I would say is if Radial Power came and said, we want to close this right now, they could. We wouldn't need to do anything.
We don't have any time limits on our approvals.
Right. No, not related to that. So if radio wanted to come to us tomorrow and say, we want to close, and then after closing, wanted to say, we want to now sell the project to this entity, there's not really any difference.
What agreement is this under? Is this under the original pilot agreement, payment structure?
That's correct.
Yes,
Well,
Which would have
5,000 per megawatt.
Whatever was in place at that time.
Yes,
But it hasn't closed yet.
correct. Yeah. It's not based on date of closing, it's based on when it was approved.
With no time of sunsetting. I thought I could have swore we talked about this before. I thought we put in a rule about this because of this exact.
For new projects. It's not necessarily retroactive.
We have a lot more that are hanging out for years, or can we look at changing that, or no? We don't have the authority to do that.
I think
That's something we've reviewed with Barclay Damon in the past, and it's something of there's no hard and fast line as far as how long before a project would need to come back to the board for approval.
We could put a sunset date in, couldn't we? Approval lapse for 8 months, 12 months.
Yeah, we've done that with this new policy. But there's just the due diligence that we had done, say maybe 3 or 4, not hypothetically, not this project, but we'd done the due diligence on the entities, the company, the site, etc. 4 years prior. It may need to be reopened before closing. So we do have some authority to do that. This case to me is very different because we had prep, as Dan explained, the intentions changed. It has admittedly been 2.5 years since the initial, sorry, just over 2 years from the initial approval. It was February of 23. But the project also is actually, I mean, the fact that it's built and meets code and etc. says that it hasn't changed either, But so it is pushing some boundary maybe with the 2 years and a couple of months, but it was also built per spec or per approved, conditions.
As was pointed out, they've lost, the risk that they've assumed by doing this, they've lost the benefit of the sales tax.
Portion,
We've discussed before, though, that the majority of the sales tax isn't actually generated because these things are purchased outside of the area anyway. I don't know that.
It's not a benefit to us.
Right.
For them, but it's a benefit to them. So they've spent another $700,000 more than they would have if we had closed.
Correct.
And so the sales tax dollars may not have funneled into Oswego County, but the sales tax dollars were paid. Right, so they spent money that they didn't need to have spent if they had closed. And I guess that's a question for why, I mean, the way these things are structured financially is more complicated than I'm gonna be able to understand, so. But,
we typically see pilots, right, as incentives to complete a project that wouldn't complete otherwise. It's been shown that essentially the project was built before there was even the benefits were there. So I have trouble coming back now and saying
they were approved. They've already been approved. And our situation right now is that in the original documents, we agreed to approve changes of ownership within reason, right? And I don't see where this is outside of reason compared to the way that these companies do business as a general practice in really any way. You know what I mean? It's taken a while for this to come through. And I agree with you about putting in the sunset provision in new agreements. We don't have that in this. So, for us to hold approval of this, I think would be, in my opinion, would be a bad precedent.
We're not following policy.
So, I don't think there's really much for us as far as this project goes. There's not much that we can debate.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would also note this project was delayed before Radio bought it, and then after they bought it by the local utility changing its interconnection policies and literally a procedure before the PSC that held up virtually every system in the state. So not all of the delay here was on them. They chose, obviously we advised them on that they could close and get the sales tax benefit. That wasn't what was driving their transaction. But certainly the fact that this agreement was in place was part of the transaction that led them to go forward and make the decision to invest in your county, hire the local labor. Some of that money would have been spent. The sales tax was basically paid to the county. The kind of materials that would be buying in the county are things like fencing, dirt, gravel work, services that are required that are used local companies for the construction. To the extent that happened, that money would have gone into Oswego County coffers and Oswego businesses. But they chose not to close simply for the sales tax as they move forward with the transaction. But it certainly was part of the overall understanding of the finances that Trail Ridge took on.
So Kevin, if the pilot isn't closed, do they still have the requirement to follow up a pilot if it was executed outlined, which means the consent for transfer of ownership? They don't have a closed pilot, but they really have to follow the process for consent for transfer of ownership because it's not executed. So technically, if it was a new owner, they'd come back to the table for a request for a pilot because it's not closed.
Correct. I think I don't know what our, we haven't really been challenged with this
Right.
particular circumstance. I think it's, I guess stated it differently. What's to say they just didn't tell us at all, right? And closed between the two of them and then just jumped into place. I appreciate the fact that they're coming and getting our permission. I don't know that creates a situation in my mind where it creates a reopening. I'm
It's not really a reopening though. It's not even closed yet.
correct.
So you're not reopening anything because you haven't really closed this one to start this one to
Yeah.
have the consent for transfer of ownership.
My understanding is that the way that this is written is that because these frequently change hands before closing, multiple times.
I
So-
know that I've had experience with them before closing. It's usually after that we come back to.
There's been a few that have happened that way. I mean, so this happened literally before with when RSC sold it to Radio,
Same
had not
project,
closed
very
before, so we set a precedent that we would.
And we
Approve a
we-
consent. Correct, we approved the consent to ownership change for that project, same two, before they had closed.
And so when Trail Ridge Power purchases this in the future, right, because we're consenting to them do that. They're taking into account this plan that we are going to allow it. So if we were not to approve it, would Trail Ridge potentially not purchase it? Is that the thought?
I think that could put the whole project at risk, yes,
So Trail Ridge has not purchased it already, is your point?
to my knowledge, no.
That's
Yeah,
correct. We contacted Kevin and he informed us that change of control was required. The project companies who actually were approved obviously have not changed and they've moved forward consistently without change under the understanding that this benefit was available to them. It's the project companies that you have a contract with. Your requirements are for a change of control. I assume that's to make sure that the company taking over is capable of carrying out the responsibilities, and this company certainly is. But the company has not changed. It's moving forward. In fact, it's constructed in accordance with the approvals of the town and with the approvals of the IDA, with the understanding that those agreements were in place. Included in that is my understanding from Kevin is even if this deal for some reason didn't close tomorrow because the company changed its mind, we would still owe you $9,500 plus your legal expenses that you've incurred to date. And the company has in writing agreed to take that on because that was part of the deal that we take on that expenditure, whether we close or not. So the company has moved forward as the project company, which I'm counsel to, without change. This is simply a change in the ownership of the company that owns the company.
We always had a 9,500 in the previous one.
This is, we're talking about the application fee. It's a.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to understand this is not a sale of the project. The assets remain exactly where they are. It's a sale of the project company.
No, and I will just say, I think, you know, on behalf of the board, like I said, I'm not speaking for them, but just from, there's been sort of a frustration in the past of projects that get approved and never get closed. And so you guys are sort of feeling the, sort of the brunt of that, I think, at this point. While you have the best of intentions and want to do that. So I think it's more of a, it's a frustration from us from seeing, you know, multiple times, you know, a consent to ownership change happen or something happen, and then just it doesn't go anywhere from there. And so, like I said,
So just to be clear on this though.
Yeah.
They're not selling the assets. They're selling the whole company. They're selling the
Correct.
LLC,
yes,
right? So our agreement is with the LLC.
that's correct.
They're just buying that LLC.
Yep.
Right? So if,
They'll own Volney PV LLC and Volney 2 PV LLC. Yes.
so our original agreement is with the entity that is being purchased. That entity will still own contract and the development, right? So I don't know.
You know, I think, like I said, but
It's a matter of precedent. I think there's an opportunity to talk about the other part of that later, but.
Yeah.
Already have it settled. We've already done this before.
yeah,
We've said precedent we need to follow up.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent.
I'll second it.
they have to do it
Any
for
further
two separate
discussion?
projects.
Well, we'll do the first one, Bonnie PV LLC first,
That was.
okay? That's Tricia, seconded by Tim.
Mhm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion on Bonnie 2 PV LLC?
I'll make the motion.
Mel? Second, by Pat. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you. We appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, IDA team.
And
Thanks
just
for joining.
before you end, I think from previous discussions as recently as this week, the intention, if it hadn't been said, and I apologize if it did, is to close these transactions within the next 90 days. So this is, you know, the
This is the
intention
end
is
game.
not for this to come back, you know, 6 months or a year from now and have the same discussion with a different set of players.
And Trail Ridge is going to own and operate this intentionally for years to come.
Correct. That's the, you are getting a well-capitalized, well-experienced partner. The radio people are wonderful. And you have a new group here who's, you know, new parent to this project. It's got a lot of capacity and a long-term plan. So we look
Okay.
forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great day. Thank you again.
You do.
Yeah.
Now we have our final solar project.
Which one is this?
Oswego 2 PV LLC, number 6.
Number 6. Where's this one located?
This is also in the town of Oswego. This is off of 104 on Perry Hill. See if you're familiar with the Pelkey property, the Pelkey farm. It's
To the north of
it's
the road.
yes, north of the road, north side of the road. It's essentially about 50 plus or minus acres of the Pelkey farm that are going to be utilized. You won't really see it from the from 104. The neighbors down below off of 89 on Jermar Drive will have more of a visual impact than anyone else. Again, this went through the entire municipal approval process, the town. We had both of these projects going almost simultaneously. We purposely scheduled them for different meetings only because this one brought out more people. And there was a room full of probably 40 plus residents that had you know, concerns. It all got worked out. Planning board has fully approved the project. Again, the company is negotiating with the town on host community benefits decommissioning plan is essentially in place, although not signed. I will say, and to echo Dan Spitzer, who I know directly and worked with on various energy projects. These two companies were some of the best, well put together, comprehensive applications I've ever seen from a solar company. Parent of Oswego 2 PV and this renewable properties, RPNY, both had really stellar applications. You know, very little that we needed to ask for because it was all there. So
This is a new project that's subject to our new policies, correct?
Both this one and RPNY both are. Yeah.
And this is $7,000 per megawatt hour. They're coming up with $10,000 deposit. For the application with 9,500 of it being
500 for the application, 9,500 credited at closing. So
credited towards our other.
towards our fee, yeah, not credit, yeah, but credit towards our fee at closing. You know, both. It also has to follow everything related to a community host benefit agreement. It has to follow decommissioning plan. And to my knowledge, Kevin, all those, you know, they've met all those criteria to date.
they have, and they've every step that the town has asked them for anything, they produced it. And like I said, we're negotiating, you know, a significant for the town, a significant host community benefit. It takes into consideration the IDA's pilot payments, but they will be paying in excess of what the town will receive in that pilot agreement. So numbers aren't firm yet, but you know, we get 7,000 per megawatt. They're talking thousands per megawatt as a local host
Per year or
per year, 2% increase, that kind of thing.
okay.
These companies offer generally as a lump sum or spread out over, those are the negotiations that are going back and forth between the town and the company, but you know, there are no hiccups that I can report or anticipate.
Now, which company is this one?
This is RIC,
This is
RIC
RIC.
Energy.
Okay,
Uh,
not the Rick Development LLC.
It's RIC Energy.
Okay.
LLC, the person that, so there's two principals, and I don't want to get the names wrong. I know the guy on the ground that was attending the meetings is really just the you know, the property guy to get the permitting in place. He drove in actually from Pittsburgh every meeting, and we had multiple meetings, a couple of them during a snowstorm. So I mean, they're committed to the project. What else can I tell you? Just very, very easy to work with. That's all. So whether they are one that will, you know, package this up and then sell it to somebody, I can't say, but I think RIC Energy does have a presence in New York State. They own and operate other projects. This one is leased, so they're leasing the land from Pelkey. And it's you know, again, designed to be a 30+ year project.
Similar for this, it's an initial resolution at this point, looking to, this has been reviewed by our bond council, determined to be an eligible project. So at this point, all we're doing is we are, you know, doing an initial resolution determining it's an eligible project and then scheduling a public hearing for the town of Oswego.
Any questions? Any comments?
Kevin, do you want to add anything on this project? Yeah, I think it's
Nothing really to add. No.
Yeah, okay.
So at this point, this is a new project that falls under our new guidelines
Right.
that we passed last year.
Yep.
Right? And we really haven't seen very many new projects come through since we passed that.
It's just this one and the RPNY one that we just had today, so.
And we and the county at the time were comfortable with the parameters that we put forward as stated, right? So How far is this from the interconnectivity on the grid? Is it a long way to go?
I don't know exactly where the connection point is, but these companies don't just do this.
They don't do it where they can get the good land, they do it where they need to, where they can connect.
Well, ideally, closer to the connection point and with the land available is the ideal. They put in a lot of homework. They look at various properties all over the area. They chose this one in particular. Incidentally, the town revised its site plan regulations for solar, and this meets the new revised site plan for new and improved setback distances and all the rest of it. This is technically in what we call a residential 2 zoning district, so it's got more residential than anything else. But it is probably the only amount of land with this much acreage in an R2 district in the town of Oswego. I mean, it just fit somewhat perfectly, so it must be close to an interconnection, because they wouldn't spend a whole lot of time and effort and money to locate it here if it wasn't. So there are no wetland issues. Everything's been, approved locally and through the state. They've entered into an interconnect agreement with Grid, so I think they're teed up, ready to go. I don't know what their construction timeline is, if it's as aggressive as RPNY, but I wouldn't doubt that both projects might be going on simultaneously, construction wise.
You said there was more interest in this project locally than in the other one because there are more neighbors. I'm assuming?
Yeah, you've got Sleepy Hollow to the west, right? There's residential development downhill off of County Route 89, Jermar Drive. Again, the company was very responsive to their concerns. Most of the neighbors' concerns were with the loss of the view, that they are used to looking out on a nice big open meadow and farmland, and they're gonna see some solar arrays. What the company did in response to that, though, is to provide a very detailed screening and buffering plan that
And that was acceptable to the neighbors?
well, it was as acceptable as it can be. I mean, ultimately, again, these are not subject to any type of public referendum. They're subject to a public vote. And it was all done wide open in the process. The county planning department was involved under the general municipal law 239 review process. Recommended approval with some notes on screening and things of that nature. So yeah, it's not to say that this wasn't without some controversy and some people not wanting it literally in their backyard, but this was pointed out, they
don't own the land.
They don't own the land, they don't own the view, and I think the company was very responsive to those concerns and have incorporated design elements that mitigate the impact on the neighbors.
Tell people buy the land. You don't want something next to you, then you buy the land and it won't permit.
Yeah, if it's for sale, and that's the other thing, this was a debate, but that the landowner could have potentially developed it into additional housing tract or any other thing that might be more objectionable. I don't know.
Put a pig farm
You
on
could
it.
have put 100 cows out there
That's
and it
right.
would have smelled a
Pig
little
farm
different than it does now.
So,
Okay, Tim, are you aware of any other opposition or anything like that to this project in your local
I-
area?
I know a lot of the same stuff that Kevin mentioned. I mean, ultimately, there were people who are still upset, but the reality is there's very little legally that can be done about it, and Kevin would know better than I do, but I got phone calls, at least 3 of them on this specific site. So, but again, it was reviewed. 239 process went through for the county, as is typical with these solar projects, and there were folks who are never going to be happy with that. But ultimately,
Do you feel that they are meeting the needs of the neighbors in terms of what they've asked for screening and other things like that to meet the needs of the community? I guess that's the question I would have is, if it's going to be something they have to look at as the
I
company.
think they've done everything that is possible to be done outside of pulling the project.
I see.
Is that fair, Kevin? I mean, there's.
Yeah, and again, the design elements, I mean, the proof will be in the finished product. But they also are going to be in that community for the next 30 years, so, you know, the town will have some level of oversight and enforcement. If, you know, the trees die and they need replacing, they're gonna, you know, companies on the hook to do those types.
Whatever
of
that
things.
company name is, whoever owns it that week, have to do something about it.
Better than a wetland.
Here,
It's
you
gonna be
had something you
swamp.
wanna say?
Couple questions, the 7,000 per megawatt is, who gets that? Is that the town?
Let's split up between all three taxing authorities. So 7,000 per megawatt. So it's a 5 megawatt project. In year one, it generates $35,000. It's split on a pro rata basis based on the percentage of whatever that taxing authorities percentages of the total.
We finally did in their last solar law, we revised it.
Mhm.
We put in a new solar law in March and they found a loophole, so we did a new one in December.
Yeah.
We went to,
Ollie?
we went to $7,000 per megawatt. We figured, you know, we're gonna get.
You're talking about for your building permit.
Yes. For the
That's
building.
very smart.
And then, the other question is, type 1, 2, and 3 solar farms, is there a type 4, and is that considered a public utility?
So, two questions, all under New York state law, from the cases I've read, all solar projects are considered public utilities for zoning purposes, right? So what that means is that a public utility can be sited virtually anywhere, even in a residential neighborhood. I mean, your power lines, your transformers, those are all public utilities that go wherever, you know, they need to go. So the New York state law does not distinguish a solar farm from a utility pole or a transformer when siting, right? So that's one thing. As far as the tiers, I mean, New York State, NYSERDA has set different tiers, and they're really based on size of a project. I may have this in different order, so forgive me, but tier 1 is like a roof mounted or ground mounted residential small project for yourself and maybe a couple of neighbors. Tier 2 is usually what we're talking about here, the community solar projects up to 5 megawatts. Community goes right into the overhead lines. Tier 3 is your larger industrial commercial scale, 25 megawatt and higher. Or that could be tier 3 could be from 5 to 25, and tier 4, if there is such a thing as that, those you know, mega solar farms, which is actually controlled by the state, and the local community has very little say in those.
In our solar law, we put in there that we would not allow solar farms, commercial solar farms in an R2 zone.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna fight it. There's one company, it'll be behind where Babcock Oil is up in, you're not gonna see that one. That one's gonna be out of sight, but that's not the point. It's farmland and gas and sewer, and the water is right there at the edge of the property.
They're never gonna use those utilities.
And that's why this particular site is valuable to the company. It is in an R2, but it meets all of the setback requirements. No variances were needed. It must have close connectivity point to the grid. The only thing, you know, that was of controversy is that it, you know, there are housing developments on at least two sides of it. 104s, you won't see it from 104, but again, from the backside, the neighbors out on Jermar Drive will certainly look out and see, you know, solar panels.
You see it from Sleepy Hollow?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it from Sleepy Hollow.
I mean, it's a shame too, because it's right next to the sewer system, it's got water, it's got gas. You know, if you were to look at where you could put a nice, and it's top of that hill, it's pretty flat, I mean, you could put a decent size, at least another 25 houses up there pretty easily, but in the end, just because that's what you prefer to happen, like some of the wetland things, it's hurt people's property and the state allows it, so there's very little you can do.
Well, and I do know during the public hearing for this, the property owner did come in and did kind of give a history of what he's attempted to do in terms of developing the property. And he's had those ideas, but there have been no, he's not gonna do it himself, because, they're retired and they've attempted different projects and just, nothing has come to fruition or has been cost effective for them to do. So, when the solar company came calling, they looked at it seriously and had certain demands of themselves, and they met those terms, I guess, and then, here we are, but.
And this is leasing, right?
It is leased. It is leased. And again, these are all very similar. This is a tracking system, so it follows the sun. It's pile driven. There's no footers or anything. It's designed to be removed after its useful life, but when that happens with technology and everything else, I don't, these are essentially permanent or not. I mean, they're designed to be removed, but
The useful life is 30 years.
check in 30 years and see where we're at.
Do they change it? We've always been told 20, haven't we? That's why we went to the 20-year pilot. I thought we were told 20 years delightful.
Well,
They may change the panels out at some point,
Their
leave everything
technology
else
is
for
or something like that.
I think most of these projects are designed, like the leases that I've seen are generally, 25 to 30 year leases with some extensions, like 5-year extensions on them. So,
Should we should, I mean, it's probably maybe not for any of us, but down the road, should we expect to see them come back at year 21 on these? If their leases are for 30 years? Or are they gonna be fully assessed at that point? I would assume, right? Because there's no exemption at that point.
Well, that's the bridge we'll have to cross from the.
we may not have any control over, because the state might,
We can go over there in our flying cars at that point and
That's right.
check it out, so who knows, in 20 years, I mean.
Do you happen to know what do we have any that are coming close? I'm trying to think of some of the earliest ones we had.
The earliest ones we have are maybe 5-6 years old.
Okay.
I mean, the first projects we worked on was like 2019.
When did county do, remember when county did ours?
Yeah, that was earlier. That was a Solar City one.
Right, I'm just curious with others, I'm not necessarily saying ours, I'm really curious to see what happens at year 20. Like, I really want to know who owns it, what's we have this decommissioning bond, I think I mean, again, I'd like to talk more about that.
There
at some
may be
point.
other solar farms out of New York that have
Yeah.
gone 20 years.
I'm just curious.
I'm curious.
I'll let you know about that. Yeah.
At this point, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the interim resolution.
I'll make it.
Tim, second. Second. Pat. Any further discussion?
So does this then have a sunset to the approval or no? Didn't we put that in?
Yes,
Is this approval forever?
no,
no, this one under our new
what I thought.
policy, this would apply to a new policy.
Yeah.
So there is sunset.
2 years from approval date, it has to be closed.
Mhm.
Okay,
Sounds good.
That's why we put it in, yeah.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. What did we miss? State EDC annual conference.
I'm gonna be really quick.
Make that fast.
Last week, presented in Cooperstown, for, New York State Economic Development Council's, annual conference. Presented on, a panel called Building Market Ready Sites. We were looked at as one of the sort of experts across the state, and, industrial park development with the new programs that are existing at the state and federal levels. So myself, I presented, we had colleagues from Genesee County that presented, some from Steuben County, and it was a good overall opportunity. Oh, also Herkimer County. But no, it was good. I had a lot of people come up, talk to me afterwards, others that are sort of looking to do the same things, but a little bit further behind. And I think that one other thing I will say is that, not related to this, but I think it also helped us prepare for our Fast New York presentation that took place yesterday. So it was a good thing, and they talk more about that. But no, it was a good opportunity, and look forward to continue to be seen as sort of one of the ones to look at and learn from at the state level. So.
That's great. Thank you. Good job. At this point, we need to, I believe we need to move into executive session. Kevin, can you tell us why?
Yep, to discuss the financial circumstances of a particular individual or corporation.
I'll make a motion.
Tricia?
And, sorry, impending litigation.
Pat? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 225.